What's going on, guys? I'm here with Peter Abraham, and Peter has covered the Red Sox for the Boston Globe since 2010 and has been an MLB beat writer since 2002. He's a contributor to NESN and MLB Network, and this is his first time winning the award. Congratulations, Peter, and thank you for joining us on this interview.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So, Peter, what was your career path like on your way to the position you're in now? Did you always know that you wanted to be in the sports media industry, or was it something that happened a little later in your life? What was your career path like to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I did always know I wanted to be in sports media. I started working for my hometown paper as a stringer when I was 15, and that's what I pursued in college when I went to UMass Amherst. That was, always my plan. And my long-term plan was to go back and work for my hometown paper. And I thought that seemed like a good, safe, secure job. And when I got out of college, they didn't have any openings. So I started looking around, ended up in Connecticut at a small paper in Norwich, Connecticut, which had a great staff at the time and covered a lot of things. And I think it was about 2 weeks into that job, I was a high school writer. Our University of Connecticut basketball writer left the paper, and the sports editor said, "Do you think you could cover UConn?" And I had no idea if I could, but I said, "Absolutely, of course I can." Right. And my next question was, how do you get to UConn? And it happened to be the first year that Jim Calhoun was the coach.
Wow.
And so I literally got in on the ground floor of that, and I covered them all the way through their first championship, and that's what led to me going to New York and becoming a baseball writer.
That's amazing. And you quite literally seemed like you always knew since you were working for your local newspaper when you were 15. So that is amazing. And you said you worked in New York. That was interesting to me when I was, researching you, is that you worked in New York for the Mets and the Yankees. And then you also now work in the Boston area. How has that transition been like, working for like the Yankees and then going to work in Boston for the Red Sox?
Yeah, well, as somebody who grew up in Massachusetts, going to work in New York, a lot of people in my family were like, "Oh, you're going to work in New York." Like, it seemed like a surprising thing. And when I got there, I was a general assignment reporter, and I covered a lot of different things, including filling in on baseball. And I kind of came to realize that if I wanted to get anywhere, the baseball beat was a good beat to get on, that there was a lot of exposure. The Mets and Yankees were both very interesting teams that we covered home and away. And I pursued, that path. And halfway through the 2002 season, that they approached me and asked me about becoming the Mets beat writer. It was a very eventful time in Mets history. Bobby Valentine and the Wilpons and right. Mike Piazza and Tommy Glavine joined the team. There's a lot of things going on. And after the 2006 season, they came to me again and said, "We'd like to move you over to the Yankees," which for us was kind of a bigger beat because they were closer right. to Westchester County. And that was, right at the height of, the Joe Torre dynasty and, Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera, the whole thing.
Right.
And it was fantastic. It was like covering the Rolling Stones. I mean, everywhere you went, there were, huge crowds of people and so much interest, and every story that you would write would get a lot of attention. And sort of two things happened that were really fortunate at the time. Our paper started to get into, using the website more often, which at that time wasn't a big deal. And the way we didn't have as big a staff as say the Daily News or the Post or Newsday. So we were trying to come up with a way, what can we do to try to stand out on this beat? There were so many great baseball writers in New York. So what we came up with was we can put things on the internet. Nobody was really doing that at the time. And we started in spring training one year, and I honestly don't know if anybody looked at what I was doing for the first couple of days. And then I was just at a loss. What can I do? What can I, how can I make an inroads? So in spring training, they put the lineup up every day, that in the clubhouse. So one day I copied down the lineup and I put it on our website. It wasn't even a blog at the time. It was just
right
on the website. That's what we called it. And next thing I know, like there were comments on it, like people were happy to see the lineup. So I started putting the lineup up every day. And before you knew it, we had an actual online audience. And by the time I left there, we were selling ads and we had a brand and the Low HUD, what they called at the time, the Low HUD Yankees blog was a thing. And much to my surprise, and the players told me they saw it, and Joe Torre knew it existed, and there's like, it was all kind of crazy. And that's what helped me get to the Globe. The Globe was trying to expand their online presence, and I had become known as this guy who knew how to do a blog,
Right.
and which is kind of now baseball blogs by newspapers aren't as much of a thing.
Right.
At the time, that was kind of a big deal.
That's amazing. And you also that's something that you see every day, is like the lineup cards being,
Yeah.
uploaded. Now that social media, now it's like all over the place. Now you see that every day. It would be weird if you're a fan and you don't see your team's lineup within like 3 hours of the game. So
Yeah, and
that's
I think
awesome.
for better or worse, I'm the one who invented that.
Yeah, yeah, literally. That's awesome. That's incredible. So Peter, right now, what would you consider to be your favorite part of your job?
Well, I guess journalistically, I like that I write for a paper in the Globe that really, puts a lot of time and money into covering the Red Sox, and I get to really dig into stories and spend time on stories. I've got a chance to write some lengthy stories, which you don't see a lot of outlets doing lengthy pieces anymore. So I really appreciate being able to do that. And beyond the journalism, it's been great to be able to travel. I've gotten to see a lot of the country, and between the regular season and the postseason and everything, I've really enjoyed getting a chance to see parts of the country that I wouldn't see otherwise.
Right. That is that sounds like and especially now recently with the way the Red Sox have succeeded, and been a solid team. They've been going to the playoffs and stuff like that. So what would you consider to be the highlight of your career thus far? It could be tangible or intangible. What do you consider to be the highlight of your career?
Um, well, that's a good question. I don't know that it's certainly not any one story. I just think it's more that I started out with these expectations of hoping I could join my hometown paper and write about my old high school, and that would be great. And I've ended up, I've been to 4 Final Fours and 10 World Series, and I covered
Wow.
the Olympics one time, and I've got to do all of these things that I never thought would be possible. And if I had to come up with one highlight in 1998 in the summer, UConn went to Europe to have like an exhibition tour before the season, and we started out in London, and then we went to Israel, and the team let a couple of writers travel with them, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to that, and I covered basketball games in Israel, which is like the craziest thing, and there I am like sitting at a court in these different historical places, thinking to myself like, this is a long way from covering high school sports, so.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I always, I'll always look back on that trip as, you never know where this thing could lead.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just in general, like getting to where you are now from where you started in your beginning aspirations. So, what is the best piece of advice you can give someone who is thinking about getting into the industry, maybe a little younger like myself, who are thinking about getting into the sports media industry?
Well, I would say two things. You have to always be writing, and even if it's not necessarily for publication, you always have to be working on your writing and trying to come up with your voice and how you want to sound as a writer. And I think, me personally, it took me a long time to kind of, come to my voice. And there's a lot of, ups and downs, and editors who worked with me and trying to figure out, how I wanted to present what I knew. And the other part of it is, I spent a lot of time in my career, early in my career, not working for a whole lot of money, covering things for, $10 or $15, being the person who volunteered to work on Sundays or to stay late on Saturday nights and do things. And at some point, if you want to succeed in this business, you can't be looking at the clock, and you can't be worried about, well, I did 60 hours of work and I only got 40 hours of pay, or, how come I didn't get a vacation day or whatever.
Right.
I think at some point you need to be really committed to what's important is your career and getting to where you want to get to. And then all that other stuff's going to take care of itself. And when I worked in Connecticut, we had a small staff, and all of us had to pitch in, and I covered, all sorts of crazy things, high school track meets and wrestling
Right.
matches, and, you name it.
Right.
And all of that, I think gets you to where you want to get to. So you can't be so, you have to be, I'm not sure, be willing to take on the smallest assignment, because that could lead you to a bigger assignment in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe not for 2 months, but it'll get you there.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, I've been hearing that a lot in these interviews. It's like, don't be too picky with your first job. Try to learn many skills, writing, editing, front of the camera, behind the camera, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
If you're trying to be a sportscaster, sports writer, whatever it is you want to do, do the things that other people don't want to do necessarily.
Yeah, well, I mean, a good example of that, when I worked in New York, my first couple of years, I was a general assignment guy, and the editors came to us one day and said, "We want to send people to help cover the NFL on Sundays. We covered the Jets and the Giants, but we can't give you a day off to do it. If you want to do it, it's going to be on a voluntary basis. All you're going to get is a byline." And they offered that, I think it was to 5 of us, and only 2 people said they wanted to do it. Wow. So me and this other person sort of divided up doing NFL sidebars. And to me, it was like, I would have given them money to go cover an NFL game at the time. And, I got to cover NFL games. And,
right.
and, I think that's, at some point in your career, you have to be willing to do that kind of thing.
Right. Right. That's amazing. So thank you, Peter, again for joining us, and congratulations. Those are all the questions I have for you. If you want to thank anyone before we head out, or you want to leave us with any closing remarks, you can go ahead and do that now.
Oh, yeah, no, I'd just like to thank my family. My mom and my dad literally drove me to games to cover before I had a license. And I'm sure they thought this was, seemed like a crazy thing that their son would ever work for a newspaper. And they both, to this day, get excited when they see my name in the paper. And, I think, like a lot of people, I couldn't have done it without my folks. So
that's amazing. Thank you again, Peter, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.